I sold the first business was actually I made more money in this week than I did the whole previous 5 years. I'd literally put it in a plastic bag because they didn't staple it together. And I just sat in my car and I thought, oh, that's really weird. Started watching Secret Millionaire and I spotted this guy that I quite liked. He was very driven, very straightforward. I said, oh, you might not remember me, but I met you at this event or whatever. I didn't. And he messaged me back and he said, I've never met you in my life, but I like how forward you are and that you're cheeky. And he actually came and met me. So yeah, you might buy something quite cheaply, but then you're shoveling money into it. You kind of only ever see the success stories, but for every one success story, it's probably 1,000 that have gone wrong. So it's high risk stuff, yeah.
Nathan, welcome to the Driven Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
All good, mate. All good. Excited to have you on today.
Thank you.
So, for the listeners and the viewers, who is Nathan Winch?
Difficult one. So, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I wouldn't it's not something you kind of call yourself, but I suppose what I do, that's what it is. So, I'd say probably a survivor, an investor, lots of different things basically. Depends on the situation, but that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. So I run a small kind of private equity firm based out of Leeds. We've got a couple of offices across the country and invest and grow things basically is what we do.
Okay. And what does the word or the term driven, what does that mean to you personally?
So for me, I think the word driven is consistency, you know, because a lot of people, in my opinion, where I think a lot of people fail is not being consistent or chasing the shiny penny with a lack of focus. So I think, like I say, in my opinion, I think success rewards time in the game is a phrase I like to use. So the longer you're kind of doing something and grafting and focusing, the more successful you'll be. You know, there's obviously failures with that, but that's kind of how you learn, really. So I think that's what driven means to me.
Yeah. And what's driving you at the minute?
You should have prepped me with that question. Probably family. So I've got a little one now, 18 months old. A number of dependent family members. So I guess it's just, mainly family, wanting to do better and just wanting to win, I suppose, is the main thing. So it's not necessarily about money, although it kind of has to be. But it's mainly about kind of a big scoreboard in the sky and just basically getting better and winning, I suppose.
Love it. And so we go back to the start.
Yeah.
So what was life like growing up? You know, you're obviously, we're recording down in London. You're not from around this neck of the woods. So, you know, what was life like for Nathan as a kid and going up into the teenage years?
Not too bad. I mean, when I was really young, I kind of found out I had this kidney illness called nephrotic syndrome. So I spent a lot of time in hospital when I was a kid, which is where I think my appreciation for science and medicine came from. So my background's actually in sort of biological sciences and medicine. So that was difficult, although it's all I knew at the time, so I don't really remember a lot of it. But that kind of, I suppose, shaped who I am, made me resilient, you know, made me able to overcome things from a young age, I suppose. And growing up, pretty normal. We didn't have very much as a family early on. So we kind of lived in a 2 up, 2 down kind of scenario, I suppose. Went to school normally, was all right, was a bit of a mid-tier kid. So, you know, hung around with the cool kids, hung around with the nerds as well. Yeah. So kind of people call me a floater, but I think that's not a term I want to really use. Right. So just kind of fairly normal. Was always a bit entrepreneurial at school. So set up the school's first newspaper when I was at school, which I think was the first flare of obviously what I'm doing now. Just kind of went from there really. So other than the obviously the medical stuff, fairly normal.
And so where did that flair come from? Because if you're into, you know, you was into science and we'll go into uni a little bit later, but you know, you studied science at uni and that was kind of your thing. But you say you've always had that sort of entrepreneurial flair somewhere. Yeah. Where's that come from?
Do you know, I don't really know. I think it's just maybe my background, maybe being pushed when I was younger to do better. I don't really know. I think I've always wanted to kind of be a bit different, do something different to everybody else. So maybe that's where it started, but it's kind of, it's a difficult one to pinpoint because it was so long in the past. But, you know, at school, I'd be the one to, you know, play the games and everybody would come along with me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I was never the kid that was selling sweets, although I had connections into the kid that was selling sweets at school, and always got a discount. But yeah, I've always kind of been a bit of a leader. Do you know what I mean? In a non kind of, contentious way. So maybe that's the kind of the start of it, and then when you bring that into work, that's kind of the same sort of thing, perhaps.
Yeah. Any role models? Anyone that you sort of looked up to at that age that you thought, that's where your inspiration was?
Not really. I mean, I've never really had role models. It's not. I've kind of always kind of focused on what I'm doing rather than to look at other people. So not really. No. I mean, I've had people help me in the past, and had, I guess, various mentors over the years, but I've never really kind of had a role model, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you. And so you went through school, went into uni, carried on with your science, got to the end of uni, seems, and then decided to set up your first business.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about?
So it was actually during a gap year at university. In fact, actually, going back a step, at university, I did set up a business early on, which was kind of web design, web development kind of thing.
Done the same thing.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through that baptism. Did quite well, made a bit of money, funded, a slightly elevated student lifestyle. That kind of closed down. And the first real kind of foray into business was the medical business, was the pharmaceutical business. So I worked in the NHS in my gap year in R&D, and quite quickly I found myself procuring stuff for my department. So on the NHS supply chain, so we were in women's reproductive research, and I kind of had to buy things. They relied more and more on me to do different things, and I was buying things. Now I can't remember exactly what it was, but my analogy is always this. I kind of bought a fork or something like that off the NHS supply chain, and it cost like £4.50 for this one tiny little thing, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Yeah. So I kind of looked into it, and the whole supply chain at that time was kind of like, no word of a lie, was like 6 or 7 companies selling this whole broad range of stuff to the NHS. It was basically an oligopoly. And I thought, how difficult could it be to start a business? Bearing in mind, I kind of had that bit of a flair already with the stuff we talked about. How easy would it be to start a business and win a contract? So that's where it all started, and that's Pandora's box opened. So I went for it, basically, started a business, looked at the contracts and how to bid and stuff. And because I kind of spoke the NHS's language, I knew what to say. And we bid on a contract, and I can't remember how old I was, like 23, 24. And we won this share of a £40 million contract. And I was a student, didn't have any money. I had one guy that was working with me who said, you're going to have to find an investor really quickly. Because it was, but gave us like 6 months. Once you get the letter that you've won the contract, there's a period of time before you kind of, you're onboarded.
Yeah. How did you win that contract though? Because was you doing any supplies or anything before that, or was this a brand new company that you set up?
No, I was doing some stuff before that. So kind of playing about with it, I suppose. Yeah. And then the NHS was obviously a natural thing to look at because that's where I worked and that's what I knew. So I kind of went down that road, and I knew where to look for the contracts and stuff as well, which is not always an immediate thing. So opened an account, became a bidder, and got the job basically.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny because we've been interviewing quite a few business people on this podcast so far, and that phrase of how hard can it be seems to crop up quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's always rock hard as well. That's the thing that everybody doesn't say later on.
Yeah, no one quite understands that at the start. But I think as someone who's driven in entrepreneurship, I think you have to have that level of, well, how hard can it be? Let's go and do it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You've got to, because otherwise you'd never get started, would you? So.
Yeah. So you won the contract. Then what?
Scrambled around to make sure it was all up to speed and compliant, basically. Had to find a product guy, had to find a branding guy. We basically had to do everything from the ground up. Yeah. So I kind of did everything myself. I was packing the product, ordering the product. Eventually we got a lease on this little warehouse in Leeds, and built it up from there, essentially. So again, in there on weekends, doing the boxing up and stuff myself, and just fulfilling the contract, which gradually kind of ramped up over time. Doing plenty of miles in my little Vauxhall course up and down the country, visiting different hospitals, NHS trusts, speaking to IPC nurses and stuff, and matrons and finance directors, and just kind of that's even to this day, that's the most graft that I've ever done. It's kind of ridiculous the amount of work that I did.
Relentless.
Yeah.
And so you touched on the fact that you had to go out and find an investor fairly quickly. How did you do that? And what sort of money did you have to raise?
So it was, I remember it actually really vividly. So I kind of just thought, well, how do you connect with people with money? Like, I didn't have a clue, and this was, you're talking like 13, 14 years ago now. So I'm like, how do I connect with people that have got money? What the hell am I supposed to? So I thought, I'll just watch some TV shows. And you'll find rich people on TV. And I started watching Secret Millionaire, and I spotted this guy that I quite liked. He was very driven, very straightforward. And I kind of dug him out online, and I sent him an email. And I said, you might not remember me, but I met you at this event or whatever. I didn't.
Yeah.
And he messaged me back, and he said, I've never met you in my life, but I like how forward you are and that you're cheeky. And he actually came and met me. It was at the Great Northern Hotel in Peterborough, across from the train station, and managed to get 100 grand out of him. So, and then grew the business from there, and, we are where we are today, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good story. I love that. And so you grew the business up, eventually sold it to one of your customers or suppliers?
So it was a bumpy ride, so it wasn't a planned sale. It was taking a lot. So we introduced, I like to say this, it probably wasn't me, but we introduced alcohol-free products into the NHS for like cleaning consumables, hand sanitizer, that sort of thing. It was quite difficult. The NHS are resistant to change. So to grow the business was taking a long time. And this investor was from a background of fast-paced environment. So he was kind of saying, look, we need to move this along and all the rest of it. And it wasn't growing as fast as it should have done. So basically, he wanted out. And I said, look, I'll try and buy you out. So took out a massive loan, begged, borrowed and steal from family members and friends, and eventually bought him out. And then down the road, we sold the company to one of our chemical suppliers.
Okay.
And that's where I made my first chunk of money, basically, and then kind of went from there.
And what was that feeling like after you sold the business? Because I've spoken to a lot of people in the past, and they think it's going to be this big euphoric moment, and often it's not quite the same. So
it's the hype of it, really, that you think about. And then when you're sat there and you're signing these reams of papers, these great big chunks, and then straight afterwards, I remember taking a copy home in my car. I'd literally put it in a plastic bag because they didn't staple it together. And I just sat in my car and I thought, that's really weird. I mean, it was life-changing money for me at the time, but it wasn't, it was like hundreds of thousands. It wasn't millions. So couldn't really retire. It was really weird feeling, because I thought relief, because obviously when you're running the business, there's always something to do. There's always a risk. A bit of relief, a bit of what to do next. So a bit of confusion, maybe a little bit of a loss of identity as well. Because that was me for a very long time. It had my name on it. So bit of a loss of identity and stuff like that. So not what I expected, really.
Okay. And was you doing anything else at the time, or was it just Winch Pharma?
No, it was just that.
Okay, so you went from being busy every day to nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
And how long was the period of time between that and when you went to start your next thing?
Probably a few months. So I kind of did a bit of consulting for another business that wanted to get into the NHS, because obviously that was a hot thing at the time.
Yeah.
It's selling to the NHS. It's like the jewel in the crown. I mean, they've got a better credit rating than most banks, the NHS. So, great customer to have. So that kind of took me along for a while, but it wasn't really my own thing. So kind of started another business, won an NHS contract and sold it without doing any trading. So that was the next thing after that. And then after that, did a bit of angel investing, which again, you can't really earn good money from that in a short period of time. So, the time horizon of actually to make a return was too long. So kind of started another business, and realised that that takes a long time. So how do I cut down this time of building something? And I thought, well, it's buying something, isn't it? Essentially. So kind of got into that, started off really small scale, and then just kind of snowballed to where I am today, essentially.
And if you could take a lesson from that first business, because that's when you really learn a lot, and obviously life is a constant journey of learning, but in business, you know, you said that's the most you've ever worked, that's the hardest graft you've ever put in. What was one lesson that you could take from that you'd have done differently?
It's difficult. Probably keep focused, because I wasn't as focused as I perhaps could be. So we're looking at new products all the time. We're looking at, you know, new customers, different things like that. So I kind of thought, well, if I could go back and do it again, first of all, I could probably do it in half the time. And second of all, probably make more money because I'd be more focused. So, yeah, probably be a bit more focused, really.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things. And so I personally struggled with as well is, you know, shiny object syndrome, and you always got other things coming at you, so many opportunities. So, yeah, staying focused definitely key. So you touched on it just then. You went from, you've done a few bits in between, and then you thought, okay, buying something a bit is the way of speeding up this process. So where did that journey start?
So we bought a small cleaning consumables manufacturer for 50k.
Right.
So starting off dead small, and kind of grew from there. We sold that probably within a year.
Okay.
Trying to find my feet, just kind of fumbling around. Because what I realised was when I sold the first business was actually I made more money in this week than I did the whole previous 5 years as an individual combined. So I thought selling it is really where you want to be. And that's then where I thought, well, I need to, rather than start something and keep selling it, buying something cuts out that whole, you know, the full hard graft. So somebody, you're doing the final mile, I guess, kind of thing.
Did you scale that business a lot within that year?
Not really. New customers, you know, expanded the scope of incumbent customers, but didn't really do that much to it, to be honest, to sell it on. In fact, there was somebody else in the business that actually bought it from me.
Right, okay.
So it made it quite like a sandboxy type thing.
Yeah.
But just kind of did it, went bigger and bigger until we did more, really, and kind of didn't become sector agnostic, but we kind of broadened the range of what we do and brought in management teams that know these industries, because essentially the skills are transferable, and you know, in fact, P&Ls and balance sheets and forecasts, they're all the same. You just need to have a bit of knowledge about the market or the vertical or whatever, and you kind of, it's all the same sort of stuff, really. In essence.
You're taking the business strategy, and just adopting it into other industries. So you went from the cleaning business, sold that. What was next?
After that, we bought. I'm just trying to think. We made a couple more small investments, and then we bought a. Straight after that was a transport business. So I remember we made an investment in a construction company as well. So we bought a transport business. And this was fairly big. This was jumping right up. But that didn't work out. That essentially failed. We had some. We had some run-ins with the way the transaction was done and stuff, not to kind of say too much about it, but it didn't work. And I, lost some money on that basically. And then kind of realised that's, this stuff can go wrong, and probably learn more things there with that I've then taken on from that. And, it's really, really helped me and made us quite resilient and bulletproof.
Sometimes those situations are a bit of a blessing. Even though it won't feel like it in the moment, and you've lost some money on it, but would you have done the deals you've done now differently, or would you have done them without that experience?
So it's kind of like it's a stepping stone, really, I suppose. But we made sure all the staff were well done by and everything else, and we did as much as we could. And then kind of grew off the back of that. So we bought another few transport companies, which have been very successful. They've been turnarounds. So we've kind of gotten ourselves, and that's probably what started it. So we're working on turnarounds now, which are incredibly difficult. So buying a business is difficult, and then kind of doing turnarounds is even another layer to it, basically. But so I think that's what kind of got us into what we do today, is understanding that process. So, I've got kind of experience with liquidations, CVAs, administrations, litigation funding, all that sort of stuff. So we've kind of got a lot of experience actually from such a short space of time, like 2 or 3 years. And it's we've really implemented it in what we do now. So it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's brought us onto some of our most successful deals. To be fair, so you're right. It's probably I wouldn't change anything. I'd do some stuff differently, but I wouldn't change anything. And then the obviously the Liz Truss mini budget, that didn't help. That kind of added extra pressures for us, which can finally put the final nail in the coffin with it. But yeah, it was a wild ride. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the feeling like when you was going through that process of having to liquidate that business?
Really difficult. Yeah, just like nerve-wracking, very anxious. Probably changed me slightly as a person.
In which way?
I don't know, slightly more not more risk averse, but more calculated, being more planned out, being more thought through, being more kind of protectionary, I suppose, with what I do, and making sure I've got kind of other plans in place, so that if A happens, I've got B. If B happens, I've got C.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking, really, I suppose.
So it's actually toughened you up and strengthened you and made you probably a better business.
Yeah,
business
100% galvanised from it. Yeah.
Okay. And so the businesses that you're working on today is mainly around transport. Okay. You've got a couple
sort
of others as well.
Yeah, industry and infrastructure. So what we're looking at the moment is kind of industrial services. So transport's a big one, warehousing, distribution, which are slightly different, and kind of public infrastructure. So at the moment we own a small energy business as well. So we're what's known as a CPO, a charge point operator, so a public EV charge point operator. And then we've got some other small investments in it. We've got a publishing company, Blue Bricks Magazine, Investor Magazine, and then we've got a couple of other angel investments, which some of them are a kind of a legacy thing from what we did before that are still hanging around, and then others are more new, but it's mainly in the businesses that we run. So we've also got a timber construction company as well that works with schools and colleges and B2C as well. So focusing on like shrinking the vertical, really. So consolidating, but not in a sense that we're kind of closing things and shutting things. In a sense that we're trying to consolidate our focus really on a few key areas that are relevant to each other.
Yeah. And what this might put you in a bit of trouble, but what business that you own at the minute, what one are you most excited about?
That's a difficult one. I love all my children equally. So I don't know really. I mean, they're all exciting. There's some exciting stuff going off with the construction business. So looking at some grand plans with that at the moment. Branching out into the holiday park space and things like that. So we're building a few holiday parks at the moment. And the transport businesses, the transport and distribution warehouse businesses, I've always had a soft spot for them because they're relatively simple. The overheads are kind of fixed. You know what to expect. There's some fluctuation to it, although it is a regulated industry. We know what we're doing. It's probably the construction business I've kind of got a bit of a soft spot for currently that we've got big plans for. But everything's there's always things happening with everything.
Yeah. And something I was meant to touch on, but for people listening who may not know, what is a turnaround? What does that actually mean?
So it's taking something that's broken or is about to break and fixing it and adding value, basically. So it's the arbitrage between something that's almost valueless and making it valuable. It's tougher, but the returns are usually higher. But there's a lot more risk with it as well. So it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah. So when you take over one of those businesses, what's the kind of process that you're going through to turn it from something that's really struggling into something that's thriving?
So the team really are important. So I'm kind of nothing without my main team. Those guys are complete superheroes. So we'll go in, we'll restructure things, we'll set up payment plans, we'll talk to creditors, we'll use insolvency tools if we have to. But usually if you talk to people and you're a fresh party, it's a kind of easier than the incumbent, because people say to me, well, what you do, why can't a business owner just do that? Well, I think, and I've been through it myself, so I understand it. I think it's difficult when you're kind of in the eye of the storm and you're kind of all wrapped up in it to be able to see solutions, to be able to think positively, first of all, to be able to be detail oriented. I think it's quite difficult when you're in the center of it, and basically your balls are in the vice as well. So you've got all the personal guarantees, you've got all the loans and everything on your back. I think it's difficult. So to be a fresh party to come into that makes it easier for us, but also we've got the experience to know what to expect and the right kind of connections to make it happen as well.
Yeah. And what's the because I'd imagine that brings a lot of stress with it as well. So you're obviously not paying a lot of money for the business, but you're paying time, energy, stress. So does that put your team under quite considerable stress as well?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's sometimes it's tough to see, but my team are really passionate. Like there's 2 or 3 key people that are super passionate and live and breathe it almost as much as I do.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes a big difference, but it is a lot of stress. So yeah, you might buy something quite cheaply, but then you're shoveling money into it afterwards. So you don't escape having to spend money. So yeah, it's stressful. Yeah, it is. It's incredibly stressful, but it's like you say, if you've got a good support network, it makes it worth it. And once you're over the line and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, then you kind of understand why you do it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, part of we want to pull back the curtains on this podcast. I think people see, someone's done a £1 deal or they bought this business for nothing or cheap. What they don't see is all of that effort and stress and the money for working capital and the debt restructuring and everything like that goes into the back of it.
Well, yeah, and the times that it doesn't work as well. Yeah. You don't often see that. People are not going to shout about all the things that have gone wrong. So you kind of only ever see the success stories, but for every one success story, it's probably 1,000 that have gone wrong. So it's high risk stuff. Yeah.
And so when you're looking for new businesses, new opportunities, what are the main things that you're looking for that determine if this is an industry or a business that you want to get into?
Well, the new rules now is it's got to make sense with what we're already doing. So we don't want to really buy things that are too left field or too far horizontal of what we're doing now. So we keep things relevant. Despite actually having done a couple of deals fairly recently, we're not actually in an active deal making phase. We're looking at what we've got, we're consolidating, we're making things more valuable, we're prepping things up and adding value at the moment to stuff we've got, because we've got plenty on. We don't necessarily need any more at the minute. So just working on growing what we've got essentially.
Yeah, and is there any specific locations or size of turnover or anything like that you're looking at?
There's not any. We're not location specific, although sometimes with things like distribution and warehousing, we tend to like geographies that are not the same as ours, so that we can make it work. There's efficiencies and there's synergies in doing that. So not really, not geographically tied. And in terms of turnover, we look for things that are £1 million turnover or more, just because the cost to me for my team, our solicitors, our conveyancers, whoever else is involved in the deal, brokers, everything else, lenders. You've kind of got to find that threshold where there's a critical mass where it makes sense. And I think for us, that minimum is probably £1 million turnover, because then we know we can build that, or it can plug into something else that we've got and actually make an impact.
Yeah.
And you can actually find some money in it. Yeah.
It's got enough scale in it to actually add value to what you've got.
Yeah.
Or, vice versa as well.
Exactly.
That may add some synergies from what they've got as well. And you touched on one of the biggest things being cultures, because obviously if you're taking a business from over here and a business from over here and you're putting the people together, more often than not there's going to be a clash, or there's going to be a different working style. So what are your non-negotiables with sort of culture in the workplace?
Well, I tend not to try and get into the workplace stuff too much, because sometimes I can be a bit of a hindrance, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not allowed to do any HR stuff. So culture's a big thing, and it's something. There's all these buzzwords that you hear big corporate people using, and you think, oh, it's a load of crap. But then when you get to a certain size, it's the sort of stuff you actually have to start worrying about. So stakeholder engagement, customers, investors, suppliers, all this different thing, and making sure people are engaged and informed and, understand what's happening. And then culture as well is a big one. So we've had times where we've had big culture clashes with integrations. Yeah. So where working styles are just so different that people don't get on. They work different hours, or they're different kinds of people. That's we've got a couple things in particular that we're working on at the moment where culture's been a big impact on what we do. So yeah, it's quite difficult. In terms of non-negotiables, not really. I mean, if something's working, don't break it. Don't fix it. If something is working, don't fix it, sort of thing. If it ain't broken. But it's kind of difficult, really. You kind of hope that culture kind of brings itself eventually, and the good people stay, and the not so good people leave, and that tends to happen. When you kind of shine the spotlight on things, and start looking into things and helping the business grow, you kind of, you find your tribe, I suppose, is the phrase.
Yeah, no, I get you. Makes sense, because people who want to be on the bus will be on it, and people that don't get off. Yeah, and ideally you want them off as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it just depends how many stops they want to wait around for, doesn't it?
Yeah, normally more than what you want, but that's part and parcel. So let's talk a little bit about property as well. You've been involved in property, 10 years maybe? Longer?
Yeah, probably longer, yeah.
What's your opinion on property at the minute? What are you working on?
So mainly commercial stuff. So we, as part of the deals that we do, we always inherit property.
Mm-hmm.
So, and more often than not, it's actually a tool that we use to help do the deals. So anybody that knows kind of acquisitions, M&A, they'll know that property is a big part of that, particularly with funding or with restructuring or whatever. So we've, some of our best deals have involved commercial property, and kind of using it as leverage, kind of restructuring and things like that. So yeah, commercial is a big part of what we do, as mainly as owner operators. Done some interesting lease option deals on big commercial units. We've bought some units, we've sold units, we've done various different things, giant industrial refurbs, but still do residential. So done residential for a long time. Still have some residential portfolio left. So
are you actively selling that at the moment?
Not actively selling, but if the right deal comes along, I will. I don't feel like residential's the biggest opportunity to earn money at the moment, unless you've done a particularly good deal and you've not got a lot of capital deployed. Then that's a different story. But yeah, I kind of have a certain rule with property in terms of returns. So if it doesn't meet that, we tend to either let it go or see if we can do something else with it, essentially.
What are your investment rules?
So it needs to kind of make between 10 and 15% yield. If it doesn't, it's probably not very good. Or if we operate it as an owner, we tend to make sure that the interest is a certain amount on a mortgage or whatever, before we'll say, right, that's probably capital not efficiently deployed, therefore we pull it out and we put it somewhere else, because we can always use cash in different things. So yeah.
Okay, so you're not buying residential anymore. You're looking only at commercial.
That's right. I'm not buying any residential at the moment. No.
Okay. And so, what's the future plans then for? We've not even touched on this yet, but your holding company is Winch & Co, isn't it? So, what's the long-term aspirations for the business?
So I think long-term aspirations is to obviously always make a good return. Ideally, have some companies that are accretive in value, so things that kind of grow on their own over time, and contribute, and carry on doing deals, because I set out on this particular path to be able to buy and sell. So that's still sort of the plan, albeit it's an extended plan and things don't go to plan, especially when you're doing turnarounds. So just kind of more of the same, really, but kind of keeping it again more focused, and trying to keep it keep the time scale of it relevant and not too stretched out, so that we can recycle cash and do deals, basically.
And so at the moment, online, Instagram particularly, I'm not a TikToker, but I assume on TikTok, a lot of people are talking about business acquisition and certain deal structures and how you can do that. But if we was to do like a mini masterclass, you're someone who's done lots of deals, you've bought businesses, you've sold businesses, someone who's looking to start, and ideally someone who's got a business at the moment, but they want to go and acquire another business. Where do they start? How do they do that?
Tons of options, really. I suppose there's actually a few companies where you can engage their services to kind of find companies for you. There's obviously brokers that list deals similar to estate agents, although there's a lot of dodgy brokers out there, so maybe not the best angle. or it's talking to competitors, obviously very carefully, or suppliers. So if you want to vertically integrate and you want to control your supply chain costs, you can go kind of up instead of across. So you can buy suppliers or you can buy customers, certain customers, just by talking to them, really, confidential chats and stuff. I mean, we used to do a lot of deal origination years ago, but now we don't do so much because we've been active with various deals. We get a lot of stuff come our way.
Yeah.
So once you've done a deal or two, usually you get stuff handed to you now and again. But I think
is that through brokers or sellers direct?
Bit of both. So people that approach us directly that want to kind of get out. We also have, thousands of brokers that contact us, but also companies that are engaged by sellers to sell. So there are companies, like corporate finance companies and the stuff in between, where people pay them to help them sell their business.
Yeah.
So we're connected with a lot of people like that as well. So they're great people to get in with if you want to buy, because their remit is to sell. So if the deal's right, they can make it happen quite quickly. So I guess start there, really.
How would you build them connections? If you were starting out, you're a little bit unsure of which way to go. How would you go and build them connections?
I think just meet people, have coffees, just tell them what you're looking to achieve. Make sure people don't pull the wool over your eyes, so kind of tread carefully. This is where being a business owner already helps. You know your industry, you know your numbers, you know what's right and what's an anomaly in your industry. So stick to your industry would be my advice. Stick to what you know, because then it makes the new learning curve of buying something and integrating it and learning new systems and all the rest of it a little bit easier to swallow, rather than it being a new industry and all the other new stuff on top of it as well.
Yeah, okay. And part of what we do on this podcast is ask each guest from their experience, their lived experience, their business experience, whatever it may be, to give 3 pieces of actionable advice to our listeners. So what would yours be?
So I'd say the 3 pieces of number 1, I've mentioned it all the way through, is focus. You've got to remain focused. That's absolutely critical. You've got to be able to say no. You should be saying no far more than you're saying yes. It's about not being distracted, really, because that's, as I said before, success rewards time in the game. So keep focused, which is the next thing, really, which is consistency. Yeah, that's number 2. You've got to keep going even when it seems like it's not right. And provided you're a resilient, and any entrepreneur will be like this. You'll find a way through whatever the next problem is. You always do. You always do, even though you're anxious and you're worried at the time. You'll always, you'll find a solution. So remain consistent with that focus, consistently focused and consistent on what you're doing. That's critical, because you'll find that it might take 5 years to get to a decent foundation before you even think about doing anything next level. And then the final one is always focus on cash flow as well. Cash flow is a really important thing. It's what kills the majority of businesses, is bad cash flow. Keeping your eye on the numbers, always, you're an absolute moron if you're not doing these things. Monthly management accounts, or at least quarterly management accounts, keeping an eye on the balance sheet, making sure that you're accruing value on the balance sheet all the time, making sure that you're profitable. If you're not, you need to know why. You need to be working on those things. Keeping cash. Cash is king. Yeah,
I think a lot of people look at a profitable business and think, well, look, that's great. But what they don't realise is that a profitable business can still go bust for a lack of cash flow.
Well, a profitable business can still have negative cash flow. So you can still the P&L can still show profit every month, but actually your bank balance is going down, and people don't understand that, and that's why you need to learn accounting principles or have a really good accountant that can explain it to you. But you're absolutely right, and that's the key thing. That's why profitable businesses go bust as well, because of cash flow. Cash flow's really important, because they say obviously revenue's vanity, profit's sanity, but cash is reality. So it's equity or profit doesn't pay for the electric bill. Cash does, and that's what kills businesses.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think that's one thing that people neglect maybe too much. And they're looking at their P&L and they think, okay, we're brilliant, the bank looks okay, but not actually realising that at some point in time they're going to hit a bit of a bump in the road. Yeah, well,
and it's especially important with acquisitions as well, because it's also a business you don't know, which makes it even worse. So you don't know the habitual spending patterns of that business. You don't know what that business is doing next, how much cash does that business carry. So cash flow's ultra important with acquisitions, especially if you're going to load it up with debt to buy it in the first place. So you're going to add further cash flow pressures. So yeah, cash flow's definitely got to be one of the three most important things.
Yeah, I love that. And you've touched on focus 4 or 5 times in this, which I really like because, again, you know, as I say, it's something that I've struggled with, and I think most entrepreneurs struggle with.
Well, yeah.
How do you stay focused?
Having bumped into the wall so many times through not being focused has scarred me. I've got the Harry Potter scar. It says focus across my forehead. Just making so many mistakes, which again have been linked to lack of focus. So it's just so important. And any super successful business person you talk to, they'll tell you the same. 100%.
And it's that real discipline.
It is,
of training yourself to
100%.
be like that. Well, look, Nathan, it's been amazing having you on. I think we've got some real good insights to all the listeners back at home. So thank you very much for coming on the Driven Podcast.
Not a problem at all.
Take care. Thank you for tuning into the Driven Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment to let us know what you found most insightful. But most importantly, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next episode.